Okay, so this is Wednesday, May the 25th, 2022, and we'll call the meeting to order at 9:30 and begin with adoption of the agenda. Is there anything, additions from council or from administration? Anything?
Move to accept as presented.
Okay. Motion to accept the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor? That's passed. Next item, 3.1, regular council minutes for 11 May 2022. Any errors or omissions? Councilor Cush.
I'll move the minutes of May 11th, 2022 as presented.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? That's carried. Bylaw 5.1, we're gonna skip over that one until we get to our budget adjustments in 8.1 new business. That one we're turning over to Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, the Alicia Bourbeau, the Director of Corporate Services, has prepared some adjustments for the 22 budget before council decides on the tax rate bylaw, and Alicia will take you through that RFD.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Your worship, members of council. Before you are the adjustments that administration has identified in that would be changes to the 2022 budget, which was previously approved by council on December 22nd, 2021. I will first ask you to turn to the very last page of that is a sheet that looks like this that has the summary of the adjustments, and going through the previously adopted budgeted expenditures were for $32,112,806. That is after the $32,939,370 after the accumulated depreciation is removed. Adjustments to that figure is, it was discovered a capital project in the amount of $642,500 was entered both on the revenue and the expenditure side, so the effect of removing that is net zero at this time. We have an increase to debenture costs, while debenture costs do remain static over the lifetime of the debenture. There was a debenture that expired last year and a miscalculation on what the new amount was done prior to receiving the confirmation from Alberta Capital Finance Authority. Based on based on leaving the tax incentive bylaw for the 2022 tax season, there's an increase to expenditures of $56,000. We also are noting an increase to the crack ceiling contract that has been changed, and that is largely contributed to the fuel surcharge that we're seeing on a number of our invoices now. I'll skip over the transfer to reserves because that is the plus and minus that we're using to balance this out, and go to the next line, which is forecast to fuel increase. We've added $400,000 to the 2022 operating budget in anticipation of fuel costs being higher. We had them in the budget at just over $500,000. Now this will put it at just over $900,000 for the year. And there is a reduction to the requisitions for both school and seniors based on the budget amount. So the
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, Councilor Dean.
I just want to come back to the forecasted fuel increase. So it was budgeted $500K, and the number that you guys are forecasting is $900K?
correct.
So just about double. Wow. That's huge.
So what the impact of all of those are is we anticipate $500,000 less being allocated to reserves at the end of 2022. The next line down, we do the same exercise to balance for revenue so that we're assured that our revenues do equal expenditures. Again, the correction of the $642,000. We're showing an increase to taxation for the fuel. Sorry, that should not read RFD, but for the fuel adjustment. The increased taxation for the incentive bylaw, increased taxation for the debenture cost, increased taxation for the crack ceiling contract. We do have the reduction in requisitions, so that decreases our revenue line and also affects the transfer to reserves. So we're finding the money for these increases from within the budget that was presented to you earlier, and the adjustment is to the reserve accounts. So a quick synopsis of our revenue generation of $32,112,806. 230 of it is for sale of goods and services. The 1.2 million is revenue from our own sources, so utilizing our own equipment. We have $20,000 anticipated for profitability, if you will, after on sale of assets. So after we've incurred the costs and we've written down the depreciation on them. And we're anticipating $3.4 million in grants in the 2022 year, which leaves us requiring to generate through municipal taxation $27,255,579.
Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to Alicia, can you just explain the increased taxation for those three items, incentive bylaw, debenture costs? Is that captured in the 3% that's forecasted, the 3% increase to taxation, or is that a further increase on top of the 3%?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, that is captured within, and that's because we have now adjusted what we anticipate putting into reserves rather than add another burden to the ratepayer.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Cush.
Through to Alicia there, just out of curiosity, with these numbers that we have for requirements for taxation, does this factor in any of the numbers that we could possibly looking at through the ICF?
Through the chair to Councillor Cush, in the originally drafted 2022 budget that was presented to council, we have under our category line of intermunicipal kept a $2.8 million expense in there. And in our breakdown sheets, that shows that 1.4 of it would be for directly related ICF payments to other municipalities. Potentially any that wasn't needed out of that 1.4 would be shifted over to pay for any actual arbitration costs. And the other 1.4 was left in there, but it was attributed to, if it wasn't necessary for the ICF, it would go for legal costs on the proceedings, costs to have the agreements drafted out, as well as any additional or unutilized funds at that point going directly into the county reserves.
Councillor Wilhelm?
Through the chair to Alicia. So that 2.8 is not budgeted to make up for what the previous 2 years, right? That was year over year, so there would have been a 2.8 in the previous year. You understand that? So we've transferred now to the town 1.4 for 2020, 1.4 for 2021. Does that cover that 2.8, or is the 1.4 for 2020 that was covered in the previous year's budget?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, that was covered for in previous year's budgets. The funds that had not been expended, if you will, from our bank account were put into our accounts payable. So when you were reading the financial statements, it was an anticipated liability.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cush?
Just one more question though, in regards with the ICF on this budget here again. If the funds that were, I guess kind of what we're looking at, through our projections end up coming due, how does this affect this budget through taxation? Because it could be well beyond that 2.8. How are we going to make up that difference? Do we have any idea what taxation might look like? Or do we have, if through administrative, like any areas that you're looking at where we can make cuts possibly to be able to make up the shortfall?
Through the chair to Councillor Cush, at this point in time, if it were to, and if, I'm not certain if you said if it exceeds the 2.8 million, then we would be looking at directly utilizing funds that had been set aside for to be put into your budgets or to your reserves in 2022. There is monies allocated towards that. I believe it's $2.8 million. So that's our anticipated put in. So if the expenses come out as more than 2.8, we would be looking at directly taking from those funds, and that of course would be coming to council. So you're aware that was happening. The other unknown within your 2022 capital budget is the $3 million that we have set aside as an allowance for bad debt. Again, it's a little unknown what's happening in the oil and gas. We have had some very good increased relationships with a lot of our industry players, and we're not experiencing a great deal of adversity in collecting the taxation, other than a couple of known companies that had a lot of legal issues that they were going through. So that would also be potentially another opportunity if our collection and we receive more money than we're anticipating and we don't have to utilize that $3 million and we're unable to put it in our reserves, that would also could be attached and go to the intermunicipal collaboration.
I've got two questions. So on the last page, the summary, second last line for the total, 3.4 million in grants under revenue. How much of that is the MSI portion?
MSI is for 2022 was reduced down to just over 800,000. I believe it's 854,000. There's also, and I had it printed, there's also an anticipated finalization of our one of our 2018 emergency disaster relief funding grants, which is $1.2 million. And we have our gas tax funding, which is in the $700,000 range, I believe.
Okay. Second question is, so you're saying we're doing 500,000 less to reserves. What is the total amount that we're expecting to go to reserves this year?
I draw your attention to the, probably the third from last page, so it's one of the sheets that look such as this, and the last section of it shows the debentures. If you look directly above that, we have currently right now $2,139,237 as our adjusted, so that's after the removal of the $500,000 as our anticipated allocation to reserve.
Okay. Sorry, and I just have a couple more. So the capital expenditures that we're looking at are roughly around 3 million this year, correct?
Your worship, yes, they are 3 million as identified in the recovery plan. Why it is showing 3.6 million on this sheet is there was some carry forward monies from 2021 for work that had to be winter work, so it was completed in 2022.
All right, and just so that everybody understands the, oh shucks, now I've lost it. Where is it? Accumulated depreciation for non-cash under the expense, you've got 7.708 million there. When you talk about the depreciation, that is, can you explain that to us?
Where are you looking, sorry?
This is, I'll go with the package page, it's page 5 on the very top of 2022 budget adjustments for council consideration. I just want to make sure that we all understand that 7.7 number.
Your Worship and members of council, so on that page, it is showing, if I can draw your attention to midway through that page where we have an itemized list of all the different depreciations. It starts with engineered structures and ends with land improvements and the values there. So all of our anticipated depreciation for the 2022 budget year is $7.7 million. So that is how much less our assets are going to be worth. So if we're wanting to maintain even status quo, and we would be wanting to ensure that we are either putting in reserves or adding to our capital projects, a value close to that $7.7 million. So that will indicate to Alberta Municipal Affairs, who we report to, that we are maintaining our assets as quickly as they're depreciating. We're not necessarily making them better, but we're at least adding value back into them to prolong their life.
And the easy calculation for us is really the budgeted amount to reserves plus whatever you're spending in capital for that number should equal roughly 7.7. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
So we're at 5.9 right now, correct?
That is correct.
We're a little, about 1.8 short, right? Councillor Wilhelm.
I have two questions. One's on the provincial grants. We had budgeted to expect to get nearly 4 million and we only are going to get 3.3. Was that a single grant or just grant funding had decreased across the board for almost $650,000 less than we thought we were going to get?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, that is a direct relationship to the $642,000 capital project that was put in 2 spots.
Okay. And then, second question, it's more of a procedural one as being a new councillor. We have our plan to put X amount of dollars per year into our reserves, and we're going to see a shortfall of putting that amount of money into reserves with regards to our plan and knowing how the budgeting works now. Would not the normal step be then to increase taxation slightly to make up that shortfall with the increased costs that we're seeing this year, as opposed to cutting from our inputting into our capital reserves?
That's gonna be a council decision.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
That's just.
Go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, just through the chair and to all of council, the rates of taxation bylaw as well as the adjustments to budget were done with the lens on the 5-year recovery plan, which had the 2 large unknowns, if you will, of our bad debt allowance and then the transfer to reserves. So if our collections are far better, then that allows us to put more into our reserves. When the 5-year plan was adopted, we were looking at having a 15% increase to our ratepayers over a 5-year period, so 3% per year. Discussions at that time is that that was pretty aggressive as it was. We also had, with a number of our residential properties, they were at a 0% tax increase for the, 0% tax rate for the 3-acre parcel of their property. In 2016, I believe it was, legislation changed on that where municipalities were no longer allowed to have a 0% tax increase. So compounding our 15% over 5 years or 3% per year, we were also having to make that adjustment and bring that tax rate up so that now all of our residential ratepayers that had seen that portion of their property taxed at 0% were also going to be feeling that increase. So their increase, while we have maintained the 3% increase to the tax rate, many of the ratepayers have felt a significantly higher increase because of that change in legislation.
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
And it actually directly regards to the tax increase, 15% tax increase over 5 years. And it was just more of a procedural question on it. When we were doing the 3% tax increase, is that to total 15% over 5 years? Was that a 3% increase on the original taxation rate, or is it 3% year over year? So are we compounding that 3% increase year over year?
through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, we are compounding it over year.
Okay. And just so that we have a good idea, if you do a 3%, the 3% tax increase is across the board, residential, non-residential, because we also have that 5-to-1 ratio that you mentioned as well, right? So what is the 3%, if we go up 3% in revenue generation, what does that equal for us this year in extra revenue?
Sorry, I should have had my
It's okay.
my
I know-
tablet
I
on.
know that, you may not have anticipated that one, but
No, I do have a spreadsheet on that shows for the 2022 year exactly how that impacts. I'll just get it opened. It is including, it was 3% tax increase just on the rate over the 3 years was 981,000, I believe it was. Then I factored in the new tax rate on our assessment growth in the municipality, which was another 236. So all in all, the 3% tax increase for 2022 equates to $1.1 million. That would be so if you follow the red line there, I'm not sure if you can see that. So the 3% tax increase on the first yellow box is without any of the new growth in the municipality, and that's totaling the 900,000. And then a calculation done just on the growth. There was a little bit of loss, I think, in the non-residential section, but that equated to 263, which then brings us to a full increase of dollars to the municipality of $1.1 million.
so for our residents' purposes, they take last year's municipal portion of their tax rate, which is something we need to explain because there's a requisition on there for the potential education tax and the Laxinan as well. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay, so if you take those two out and then just look at the municipal end of it, add 3% to whatever that is from your last year, that's roughly what you'd be paying this year. Is that correct?
That is correct. Nikita, if you could bring that sheet up again and go to the purple tab. So on the uncolored boxes, you'll see the 2021 base rate for taxation for residential and non-residential, and then 3%, so the 3.2099 for residential and the 12.5516 for the non-residential would be the new rates with 3% added to the 2021 tax rate. And those little blue numbers on the side is just calculations where I'm ensuring that we're within the 5-to-1 ratio.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? There's mud. Okay.
So, excuse me, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's not a question, but I guess it's a question. Just to kind of clarify, back to what Councillor Cush had asked with respect to the unknowns that we're facing. What I heard Alicia say is that between adjustments to what we would put into reserve and putting on an optimistic look at collecting more of the bad debt budgeted, there's some room to work.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean. Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anyone wish to make a motion to pass the?
So
the
I'll move the council approve the 2022 budget adjustments to the 2022 operating budget as presented.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, while we're on the topic of finance, I guess we'll just go back to 5.1. Get up on the screen here. Did you want to introduce and then?
Yeah, your worship, members of council, before you is the 22 property tax bylaw as to generate the amount of revenue required to operate based on your 2022 budget that was just passed with the amendments.
Okay. Any questions? Councilor Wilhelm?
Not necessarily questions so much, just a comment or something that I saw on my last year's tax request from the county. We have under the social housing for seniors or Lac St. Anne Foundation, a specific line item that says we're paying for one specific of the housing units, and that's not actually true. Our requisition is for the entire region, so that might be something we want to change on our taxation receipts, because it does look like we're specifically paying just for one building, and that's not true. We pay for the entire region with that requisition, so that might be something we want to update on there.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just a clarification, what would you like to see though? I'm trying to.
Well, we can put Lac St. Anne Foundation funding or Senior Housing Foundation, but just we've got, I think it says Pleasant View Lodge on there. So it seems like we're only paying for Pleasant View Lodge when we're actually paying for the entire region's requisition. So.
Sorry, I assume, because the tax notices I've always seen are based on senior foundations, right, versus an actual lot.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, if I may, thank you for bringing that up. It is under the heading of Senior Foundation. We will look if this is a change that can be done internally. It will be changed for this year. If it's a programming change from our software company, we will have to defer till 2023.
It was just an item that was brought up during our strat planning with the Lac St. Anne Foundation. And just, this is silly, but you guys spelled foundation wrong improperly in the bylaw. Just I want to fix that. Under Lac St. Anne Foundation. Sorry guys, that stuff just
Again,
popped up
thank
to me
you.
when I'm reading.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, it's important to me as well, and I appreciate that being pointed out.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on it? Councilor Copeland?
I'll make a motion that council gives first reading to bylaw 58622, 22 property tax rate.
Okay, motion to proceed with first reading. Any discussion on that motion? Councilor Kush?
I just want to say, I know a lot of people watching this and money's tight and everything like that. I know an increase isn't always popular, but where we are, we're not even coming in where the rate of inflation is at this point. We still got to operate the municipality. I mean, we're not, I guess, deaf to the needs and the wants of the residents, but we still got to run the municipality. So,
Thanks, Councilor Kush. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Councilor Kush?
I'll move the council to give second reading to the bylaw 58622, 2022 property tax rate.
Thank you, Councilor Kush. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Councilor Prestige.
Make a motion that council proceed to third and final reading to bylaw 586/22, 2022 property tax rate.
Okay, so as a matter of procedure, this has to be unanimous in order to proceed to third and final reading. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor? Any opposed? We see none opposed, so we can go to third reading. Councilor Kush?
I'll move the council gives a third reading to bylaw 58622, 2022 property tax rate.
Thank you, Councilor Kush. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, that'll bring us to the 8.2 development permit. John.
Morning, Raven Council. We have before us a development application for part of Southeast 265910, Plan 162-1861, Block 1, Lot 1. Council recently passed a bylaw just amending the zoning of that particular lot to direct control. The amendment to the direct control district will allow council, I guess, to better have control over some existing uses and any future uses of development that'll occur on the parcel, and keeping it in alignment with the long-term goal of eventually hamlet residential lots that have been identified in an outline plan that was adopted by council a few years back, as well as the municipal development plan. The direct control district will provide certainty to the current landowner as well, as he would like to eventually retire and sell the parcel. He's been running his business for approximately 20 years. He's got various components. So what he's looking to do is to bring everything kind of in alignment and in compliance. So this development application will include a new addition to his existing shop so that he can have a hoist for his vehicle inspections. That had been approved under Development Permit 15009-2021, in which he's running a heavy and light equipment vehicle repair business. So as well as he's got a few different units that he's just storing. So we'll look at a storage compound. He's got 5 accessory structures that will require an as-built development permit. He's also got an as-built surveillance suite that's located within the shop itself. And then existing, however, I can't find a permit where it was ever approved, is he's also got a home occupation major in which there's a grader business located on the parcel. So 5 graders and support vehicles that do run from the property as well. So I'm just looking, because it is direct control district, council will require to have a public hearing with respect to the development permit. So we will need to send out adjacent landowner letters again to residents, just advising them of the development, if we get any comments, and looking to establish the public hearing for June 22nd at 9:45 a.m. here in the council chambers.
Okay, thanks very much. Councilor Wilhelm.
Through the chair to Joan, what's a surveillance suite? What is?
Oh, kind of like an apartment, so if he's gone from the property itself, there's someone there. So he's
Okay.
got actually a couple drivers that stay within the surveillance suite.
Okay.
Yeah, secondary suite, surveillance suite.
I've never heard that term before, so I was like,
Yeah.
that's a different one.
We should call it the catalytic converter patrol shop.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
sniper station.
Okay, so pretty straightforward. I think everybody's familiar with this one and through the direct control redistricting that we did on it. And then this is just for a public hearing, so there's no approval of anything going on. This is to go to the next step, get the information gathering portion, so council can get feedback from residents. So who wants to, Councilor Prestige?
Make a motion that council direct administration to schedule a public hearing for development permit 15-023-2022 on part section 265910 west of the 5th, plan 162-1681, block 1, lot 1, direct control DC1 for June 22nd, 2022 at 9:45 a.m. at the Woodlands County Municipal Office, downstairs council chambers.
Okay, thank you. Motion is accepted. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'm just gonna go ahead with one item, and that's the fact that I will not be here. So if I'm not here, and I don't know whether the approval would be on the same agenda or whether we'd be doing it later on. But I wouldn't be able, if we do it later on, I wouldn't be able to vote on the item. Again, I don't see this being a big issue, but just letting everyone know I will not be here. I've bargaining session during that period of time, so. With that, any others? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. That brings us to the 8.3 Goose Lake Fire volunteer levels. How's it going?
Good morning, Reeve and Council. Just for information, I wanted to bring this to your attention, and you accept this RFD for information regarding the Goose Lake Fire Department volunteer levels. In the fall of 2020, Woodlands County did a recruitment blitz in hopes of generating new interest in joining all the departments, but specifically targeting Goose Lake Fire Department. This campaign generated interest, but with limited face-to-face training that we were able to proceed with, negatively impacting the attendance of these volunteers. And recent employment changes of some of our existing volunteers has also reduced the activity of our department members that the county can count on for response. So the Goose Lake Fire Department, they've been actively recruiting since January 2022. There's been ads out, signs up, everything we can do. I know Nikita has put it on the website a few times for us. And we haven't received much interest. There's been very little interest in it. Some of our deterrents are training requirements as firefighters to be able to allow people to go on calls to maintain them in a safe and certified and competent manner, and the time commitment required. So we're not the only county that is in this position. All the other departments in Alberta are struggling as well. Even the city of Edmonton, you see ads for them. The city of St. Albert, it's a struggle to get people. But I just wanted to bring this to your attention. My recommendation is leave operations as it is until the end of August. And then if we're unable to recruit enough members, I'll have to bring a coverage plan back to, administration will bring a coverage plan back to council in September. And then we'll have to.
Thanks very much, Scott. Council Presage.
How many volunteers are active right now?
Through the chair to Councillor Prestige, 2.
Councillor Cody.
Yeah, I think we've seen this coming for quite a while, and I have some opinions on it, probably uneducated, but my question is there a necessity to kind of revamp the whole way that we look at our rural fire departments to make them more effective and create an environment for recruitment? I understand for the last 2 years probably, COVID has had some impact on that, but from a council perspective and for what we invest in those fire departments, I think we really need to have a think tank sit down of how we're going to structure these fire departments, because some of the problems that exist there are not as much, in my view, rural as they are, in my view, the way that they're structured. And so, it would be probably interesting to have a conversation in how are we going to deliver the service here in an effective way, and make it cost effective, because I think if I look at Goose Lake, for example, they've struggled to have enough people trained for the services that are there, and sometimes they couldn't respond because they didn't have that training. So that would be my opinion, as educated as it is.
Thank you.
Councillor Dean.
Through the chair to Scott, so you're saying that we'll leave the coverage model in place, or leave the staffing levels in place, and then come back in August. What's the model look like between now and August when we re-examine things?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, presently every time that Goose Lake is paged out, Fort to Assiniboine is paged, and we usually page Blue Ridge depending on which line where they are, because we need to action with more people.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep. Thought so, just wanted to clarify.
I'm gonna make a suggestion. So we have the trade fair coming up. We pay for a booth at the trade fair, right? So if we've got all those people coming by, rather than handing out trinkets and pamphlets about where to go and wreck in Woodlands County, can we not do some advertising for our fire department there and a little bit of recruiting? If that doesn't break any rules of the trade fair. We've got lots of exposure, lots of able-bodied people coming by that are in the area.
We have their stuff made already.
Yeah, nothing stops us from trying to, individuals that are from the Goose Lake area that stop in there to
Well,
give them a pamphlet or.
and I would suggest, like any of our areas that we're having trouble getting people, if we have that access to an event like that, let's use it. I think we just need to take advantage of the exposure. There's good traffic through those areas, so throw a Scott Air Pack out there and see if they fit.
And through the chair at council, we've talked about it at fire chiefs meetings, and I'm very positive that we would have firefighters man the booth. Like, they would volunteer their time to go do it. So I'm sure we can work something through that way as well. At least have them there, have them handy.
Do you need a motion to that effect out of council, or? All right, any other questions? Councilor Cush?
I was just gonna make a motion the council accept the Goose Lake Fire Department volunteer levels as information.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Cush. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We're on to draft business plan 2022-25. I made too big an X here. I'll skip through it. That is going to be Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, at your April 26th governance and priorities meeting, you reviewed the business plan as drafted by the administration with the manager's input. We're just asking council for formal, the recommendation from the governance and priority was to adopt a plan, and we're out seeking council's approval for this.
Okay. Any questions, Councilor Dean?
Through the chair to CEO Frank, no changes to this than what was presented at the GMP. The only comment that I would have is, I understand that staff is busy, but the delay in getting a capital plan back to council is a bit problematic. Of course, that capital plan helps us with budgeting and really forms the backbone of our strategic planning. So I'm prepared to accept this, but I just ask that we could expedite the completion of that capital plan.
When is the capital plan allocated to be completed in this business plan?
What I remember was like 2 years out.
So that's after the completion of all the asset management end of things? Do we need to wait the full 2 years to implement the entire asset management, or can we get an interim?
I thought it, sorry, your worship, if you go to the 2.3, the develop a long-term capital plan, is actually scheduled for next year to be completed. So part of the preliminary stuff would be in this fall's budget for consideration. And then some of that discussion would occur as a result of that to be adopted for next.
Okay, Councilor Wilhelm.
And that's for the long-term one, but if you look at item 1.3A, we've got a 5-year operating and capital plan that has a time frame of December 2022. So not 2 years out. The 5-year one
Yeah.
was scheduled to be completed by December of this year.
And that's for budget for 2023, so to be totally complete is you'd ideally want your asset management to be complete, but we're not waiting for that, so we're gonna put the short-term and long-term, short-term first in the fall and complete the long-term in 23rd, and then adjust it when the asset management is completed, I believe, 2 years out.
Okay, and just so that people watching this understand, once this 20-year capital plan and 5-year capital plan, 5-year and 15-year capital plans are completed, that's going to give us under our asset management plan, that's basically going to replace that amortized depreciation that's kind of a generated number in our budget. Is that correct? I'm gonna ask through myself to Alicia.
Well, they should match it to close, right?
Yeah.
They'll never be actual because, again, depending on your flow of your capital needs, right? 1 year you might spend $10 million, and the next year you might only spend $2 million, depending on the need to replace, right? So that's
my point is that 7.7 million is kind of a generated number, whereas these capital plans would be a calculated number, and they're generally a more accurate representation of your depreciation.
So depreciation is based on a set of guidelines that say that we depreciate straight line buildings at 40 years, right? So the cost of that is 40 years. What the operating capital plan indicates that in whatever year to replace that building, we're putting money away to have that building replaced, and same with every road. So then as you evaluate every year, that gets adjusted. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that because you have $7 million or $8 million in depreciation, that your capital plan will identify $8 million worth of work every year, right? That's not necessarily the case. Eventually, as your asset management gets approved, they will then, if I can use the word, fine tune it so that it then provides you with a better understanding from a planning perspective when to replace those roads. And those policy around depreciation may change. Your buildings may go to a 50-year life cycle plan.
My point is that under the current, that depreciation model that's in there is kind of a municipal affairs type of tool that's in there to guide everybody to say that's the kind of depreciation you can expect. Once we get on to a proper asset management plan, then we'll actually be able to really identify and get value for dollar out of that. That's the whole idea behind an asset management plan, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Cook.
This is a question through the chair to Mr. Frank. Because we don't have a clear understanding yet of how the ICF is going to play into this, because we don't have a determination whether capital infrastructure is in there. How does that affect our plan at this point?
Well, I think, Your Worship, through to Councillor Colton, I think that's a valid concern, and if unfortunately, if I knew the answer to that, I could provide it to you. I think at some point in time, the town's capital needs would have to be weighed against your capital needs, so that $8 million that you're eventually trying to strive to achieve to replace your assets might end up being $10 million annually. And again, unfortunately, I don't know that answer.
All right, any other comments on this? Questions, sorry? Counselor Williams?
Just make a motion that council adopt the 2022-2025 business plan as presented.
Thank you, Counselor Williams. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. This will bring us to correspondence and information, 9-1. Okay, any items under correspondence? Counselor Kush?
I move the council accepts the correspondence and information items as circulated.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Bring us to reports. Council reports and questions. All right, where did I start last time? Did I? Okay. Councilor Williams.
I wasn't too busy these weeks off, but I was part of a park meeting, and there was quite a lot of talks there about cameras and security on properties, and I thought it was pretty neat because they brought up a lot of people have inside cameras, but lots in town don't have outside cameras. So if crime's committed, they don't know where they went, which direction, a vehicle, they have no information to go off of except somebody with a mask on. So they're trying to come up with some ideas of strategic locations for outside cameras and things like that. Most of it was around Barhead, but kind of is the same for everyone else. Like if you have a security system at your house and you only have inside cameras, they don't have a whole bunch to go off of. So I thought that was some pretty neat conversations. There was lots of talks about the wild pigs that were loose in Barhead. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but I know 2 of them are gone. There was still one they were looking for the other day, so hopefully they find that one right away and get rid of it. But yeah, that was majority what was going on in that meeting. So.
Okay, any questions to Councilor Williams? Okay. Councilor Prestige?
On the 17th, we had our ACDEV committee meeting. And in the afternoon, we had the Eagle Tower Victim Services meeting. And on the 18th, we had the Whitecourt Regional Solid Waste Management meeting. Other than that, it's been pretty slow.
Any questions to Councilor Prestige? Okay, Councilor Kush?
I had a few library board meetings, Whitecourt Library Board. We just kind of obviously go over budgets and programs and stuff for the summer, kind of seeing what things are going to look like. Woodlands Library Board, again, everything seems to be going really good there. They've had a bunch of like paint nights and some of the events that the librarians have been kind of hosting in the evenings. They've been very well received by the community, so good on them for putting these programs out. It's great to see people coming out to them. One thing that did come up from the Woodlands Library, just so council's aware of, they are getting some prices. I told them, get a few. They want to try to update some of their storage that they have in the store, in their back room. I know it is a county facility, so I asked them to get prices first to bring it ahead. But what they're currently using are some like Walmart, Canadian Tire shelves, and they're not really holding up to what they're, I guess, use. They're just too flimsy. So they want to get some prices and come before us, and they hopefully through their budgets be able to afford putting in something a little bit more sturdier and I guess longer lasting to support or put all their arts and crafts and everything away. Made it out to Goose Lake in the weekend. Everybody knows it's great to see everybody out there. I mean, campsite busy, buzzing. Yeah, the entertainment. It was great to get out again and seeing people out there, and a lot of people from the community. So it was a good weekend.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Kush. Any questions to Councilor Kush? No. Councilor Dean?
Pretty consistent with the report so far. It's been past 2 weeks were light with respect to committee work. Attended the same ACDEV meeting that Bruce did. But I did spend considerable time just driving around the subdivisions within my division and having a look at, the state of the road. It's springtime, and so I've had a few concerns come my way. And then speaking with Andre at the last meeting, the direction for subdivision rehabilitation is effectively when that oiled surface gets to a state where you can't keep repairing potholes, etc., that it gets turned to gravel. And you can imagine that residents, if they're aware of it, they weren't real happy. If they weren't aware of it, they're not real happy. So questions came up about potential impact to property values and just the dust, the state of the road. So I did ask at the last meeting that we look at subdivision road rehab in our next budget deliberations. One of the things I just wanted to put out there, it's too bad Andre isn't here to answer this question, but from a dust abatement point of view, would it be feasible to use that calcium product? Now I haven't, had in-depth discussion with the residents, but what you have right now, if you drive around those subdivisions, is you'll go from an oiled surface to gravel, and then back to oil, sometimes back to gravel. And it's kind of luck of the draw depending where you live, right? So I'm just wondering if that's something that council could consider. I doubt it's feasible within our current budget, but maybe that's something we could discuss for next year.
Okay.
And that's it.
Any questions to Councillor Dean?
Councillor Wilhelm.
Oh,
So
sorry.
just kind of following the dust, I mean, any of the residents, we do have the dust control policy. I know it does cost, but if a couple of neighbors share in the same road section, they could, maybe work out something, it wouldn't be a whole lot of the cost to the two of them to get it sprayed.
Sure.
Councillor Wilhelm.
Okay, I didn't have too crazy busy of last couple weeks. I did Lac St. Anne Foundation strat planning last week, which went really well. Fun group to work with. There's a lot of characters on that board, and understanding when you're on a board like that, you have to take off my Woodlands County hat or councillor hat and put on the Lac St. Anne Foundation Board of Directors hat. And some interesting information in there. We're going to do internally, from the board and administration, needs assessment within the region, just to see where we're at in our entire region for housing for seniors and low-income housing for families. Information that I discovered while we were there, I don't know if any of our council knows this, but the requisition funding that we give to Lac St. Anne Foundation is the highest of all requisitions that they receive. And the housing that it provided specifically in Woodlands is nearly non-existent. So we provide a significant amount of money to that foundation, and comparatively to the rest of the people that provide money to them. So that was something I discussed with them, and also the town of Whitecourt discussed with them, and the fact that us and the town of Whitecourt provide the most amount of money, and we have the least amount of doors provided specifically to our county and regions. So that's something that foundation understands and is going to look forward, especially with this needs assessment and any future development, and making that equity a little bit better with regards to Woodlands. So building on that, we discussed about strategic goals within Lac St. Anne and talking to Woodlands County about potentially being creative and finding solutions to building, because that foundation specifically does not have a whole lot of money available to build directly out of their funding and the money that they have on hand, but would definitely, I believe, would be open to looking at creative ways to providing more doors within our region, specifically Woodlands and closer to Whitecourt. So I think that's something that we could look at, both our council and then taking that hat off and on that board of directors, looking at starting a discussion with Woodlands to making it more equitable for our the seniors within our region specifically. So that's something that came up through that, and I'll continue to pursue bouncing between both boards and council, trying to figure out what we can do to make sure that that requisition money that we're giving them addresses the needs specifically of Woodlands County better as we can. Something outside of that, I do dealing with the tax assessments. I know that December 2022 is the time frame for building the Reeves YouTube channel and et cetera through the business plan that we have here. I wonder if we could do something in the meantime though, and I'm willing to volunteer my time with the Reeve or whichever councilors want to do it, but do maybe a test run and create an explanation video for the tax assessment for this year, explaining what and where that money is and why, the tax increase happened and where the school foundation or the Laxanon Foundation and the school requisition money is going and how we don't have any control over that. I think this could be a great year to kind of do a test video on that and provide that on social media, better explain what and how our tax assessments work for our residents. That's a little bit of work for maybe Nikita, but I think this would be a great time to strike with something like that. And then lastly, and this one's, I don't know where the discussion will go on this, but I know we've talked about the library before, and I'm not sure if anybody's seen the letter that they've sent to the town of Whitecourt, but it paints us in a very bad light. And I think it's something that we need to address, maybe not at this council session, but at a council session coming up, because the letter they gave them and the timeline they provided to them makes us look like we're completely ignoring what's going on in that situation. And I know we're not completely ignoring it, but I do think it's a problem we need to solve sooner rather than later. And that's where I'm going to leave that.
Okay. Any questions, Councilor Wilhelm? All right. I actually you stole my thunder there on one.
Oh.
No, it's good.
I keep doing that.
It's good. It's I'm glad to see that we're thinking along the same line, especially on those information campaigns. Councilor Dean?
So when you say he stole your thunder, are you going to elaborate on library?
No, the information campaign.
Okay. So I want to come back to the library question. So council discussed a communication plan with the library board at a previous council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
What I recall was that legal counsel was going to be consulted to see.
We've got
Was
some
that in
updates
closed session?
coming up in closed session on that particular
Okay.
thing. Once you mention the word legal, it's
Yeah, fair enough, but what I'm asking is just a communication back to this council. So what I recall was that the CAO was gonna,
Was that in closed session?
was it in closed session?
Yeah.
I don't believe it was.
Okay. If you don't believe,
I may be wrong. So just the direction that there's been no communication back to council on what's going on with the library.
okay. Again, there's going to be a session coming up on that, so. Any other questions, Councilor Wilhelm? Councilor Cook?
Yeah, it's been slow as far as meetings go. Been busy trying to make contacts like after economic development and Ag Service Board meetings, there's a bunch of pieces that are starting to fall in place that have potential for development. And so it's really interesting how long it takes to have people going to an EDA, making contacts there, going to some of these strat plan sessions, making contacts with people there, and slowly but surely there's pieces to start to fall in place where you can get people to that are in the business end of things talking to each other, and structurally how it's a long game. It takes a long time to get any of these things to happen. Interesting phone calls from residents in Fort Assiniboine who are really conscious of the fact that 2023 is coming up, which will be a celebration, 200-year celebration for the old fort. And some of the, I think you've probably heard some of the stuff too, where they would really like to see some forward planning to really put Fort Assiniboine out there as a destination for not only the history of the Klondike, but the Indigenous as well, which I found really interesting from where it was coming from, where there's been a resistance for a long period of time. And so I think that's something we really need to capitalize on. Other than that, the most time that I've spent is going through this whole tax thing, trying to understand that. And it's coming together now, but it'll take a while yet, so that's all I have.
Okay, any questions to Councilor Kuchen? No. All right. So the just so I don't shoot myself in the foot, the information, it's no secret that we're doing a CAO review, correct?
Not no.
Not anymore. Yeah, no, I was just kidding. No, annually, you're required under the MGA to do a CAO performance review.
Okay, so just so that people understand what's going on there, we looked at that review process, and I've got a few companies that I've talked to. We'll be getting some proposal, and those will come to us in a session. But just updating everybody that is in progress. The information campaign on municipal taxes, that was, I've got it written right here, I swear. I think that's a great idea.
You gotta stop going last all the time. Keep
What-
stealing.
I think it's a really good idea because, a lot of people don't understand the municipal tax assessment, what we're in control of, what we aren't in control of. This 5-year recovery plan, what the difference between capital and operating, and some of the pressures that the municipality's under, and the difficult decisions that are being made right now. We're literally in a situation where we're trying to hold on to what we have, not build anything new. So it's a very different situation than one of our partners is in right now. I'll be appearing at the dinner for the site selector event. Again, I'm going to give a shout out to our economic development officer, Bert. He's worked his magic on this one and gotten multiple municipalities involved. I'm not sure exactly how many we're up to now. I know it was at least 5 other municipalities that were partnering with us, plus some First Nations. We've got some possible First Nations cooperation on the site selector. So really looking forward to that event and seeing how that comes off. First time in Canada, so really looking forward to showcasing what Woodlands and the region has to offer for future development. So another thing here. Oh, we're having huge discussions on LGFF replacing MSI in 2024. So MSI was Municipal Sustainability Initiative, and LGFF is Local Government Fiscal Framework. And it's not an easy formula to come up with. So there is an engagement session at 3, I think, today. So if you're able to sign up for that webinar, please do so. And it looks like we'll have time to do that.
Is that recorded? You know?
No, I don't believe it's recorded. No. The another thing I want to run by council here, and this came up as discussions with a few other councillors from other areas. So when we put reserves away, we are, and this discussion really came about with the horrendous rate of inflation that we're in right now. And I've been watching some things on the financial markets and some scary stuff out there in the world. There's a few countries that are at a tipping point with their debt. There's, we could be headed for the 80s again here. And I think as a protective measure when we deal with our reserves, at the moment, all we're able to invest in under the MGA is very low risk type of investment, typically GICs. And Alicia, I'm gonna look to you, they're around what, 3% rate of return, something like that?
Through the chair to Reeve, that would be at the high side.
Right. So if our inflation rate is, let's say, 3%, and our interest rate on our reserves is less than 3%, we're actually going backwards. It's literally like taking money and stuffing it in a mattress. So it's a good idea. We do need to put away reserves, but I think we need to make a way to leverage our money more effectively. There would be a change in the Municipal Government Act for our investments in order to do this, but I'd like to take a moment to get council to consider. I remember back when the tax-free savings account was created, and the idea of that was to get people to invest, to put some money away, to actually try and get some money into investment. I would suggest that the encouragement on the end of reserves would be to allow municipalities to invest in something that's very stable, that had a high rate of return, or at least a rate of return greater than that of inflation, which is something like the Heritage Fund. So, we might write up a resolution that says something to the effect of, half your operating budget, you have to set aside in short-term investments, be available in cash for funding your operations, and then anything beyond that, you can invest into a higher rate of return, low risk, higher rate of return, like the Heritage Fund or something along those lines. And I'd be curious to know if council would be interested in having a discussion around that, and maybe working with some other municipalities about trying to get some push that direction, because A, it incentivizes the savings, B, it unloads the taxpayer, C, it builds the future for the municipality. There's no downside to this that I can see. And if we have the discussion, then maybe we can point one out and mitigate it. But that's a discussion that I'd like to have. With that concludes my report. Any questions to me, Councillor Wilhelm?
Not necessarily a question, just wanted to reiterate your comments on the site selector stuff. I met that Paige Webster when he first come here and had a good chat with him. I didn't really understand, because I was when he first got on council, and didn't understand really the scope of what was happening there. But after talking with some other economic development people, and also community futures, all that, I didn't realize how special this actually is. Like, this is huge, and I do really think that for these guys, we're rolling out the red carpet and supporting Bert on this, because what he did here was pretty fantastic for our region. And the people that are coming here for this conference, these are huge players on the international scene. So I'm going to do my best to support Bert in this and support Woodlands with this event, and I hope everybody else is too, because he said, like, I didn't understand how special this was until just in the last couple of weeks, and now that I do, it's a pretty amazing opportunity for us.
Mm-hmm. It really is, and I thanks for bringing that up as well, because I think we don't do a good enough job of tooting our horn, I guess, when we have something good like this in the area. So
Massive.
yeah. Any questions to me? Okay, with that, I'll accept a motion for receiving this.
Make a motion that council accepts council reports and questions as information.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. CAO report. Welcome back, Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, on the long weekend, over the long weekend, we had an individual come in through the fence to take one of our catalytic converters on one of our trucks. So we're in the process of well, we filed an RCMP report and provided the necessary information to them as well as our insurance company. Also on the weekend, the Fortis Innavoine command unit has a blown engine, and we're dealing with moving equipment around to get them to have another command unit for that. Meeting Thursday with Gordon McIntosh with who's doing the town of Whitecourt strategic plan. He's offered to sit down and have a chat, so I'm going to be doing that tomorrow morning at 7:15 before he does the town. Attended the Society of Local Government Managers refreshing course, and interesting, again, number of topics there, and Mr. Cuff provided some insight into his world and how you manage municipalities and stuff. And then Leroy Sloan gave us some information on how to, again, provide better leadership and some of the techniques to work with your staff to do that. And one of the last ones at the banquet that night, Hugh Carver, also an individual that I don't know what how to describe him. Anyways, is in the field for many years, and indicated that lessons learned is by expressing stories, and over the more as you become more aged, you have more and more stories that you can share with your staff to provide some insight into how things are done. So that was an interesting topic that he had at the banquet evening that night. Council yesterday received an email about a purchase of land that'll be on the June 18th meeting, as well as, if possible, would like to establish a special council meeting in regards to the organization with just council and the CAO. And that's all I have.
Okay. Do you need a motion to establish that special meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I need dates that works for you guys.
Okay. So that's, so you want one of us to make a notice of motion on that one?
How quickly do you want it?
Whatever works for you guys. I just want to, I need to have that conversation. It's not needed tomorrow, right? It's not urgent. It's just, I'd like to sit down and have a conversation.
Are you prepared to set a date for that? If we made a motion for it?
Sometime in June is fine.
Okay. Any questions to the CAO, to Mr. Frank? I got one. You mentioned, my mind's going blank now. It was about a timeline. Oh, the offered purchase. So we've got a policy that's in the works that's supposed to go to on land purchases and that kind of thing. When are we gonna see? So that letter, I guess, kind of aligns under that policy, would it not?
Potentially, it could,
Potentially,
right? Yeah. June 2nd is when we have that policy going for it.
Not the land management one, no.
You're not ready for that?
Not if you want all the procedures attached to it.
Sorry.
If the procedures are to be attached to it, then no.
Yeah, no, you don't need the procedures, you need the.
Don't work too hard on it, we'll just wreck it anyways.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sorry,
and that's-
wreck it by suggesting, tinker with it, that's what I meant to say, tinker, we'll tinker with it.
You shouldn't do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, does anyone want to make Councillor Dean?
Just just coming back to the meeting that Gord's proposing, are we looking at our calendars right now, or are we gonna do that by email?
Well, yeah, I think we should do it right now.
I could ask that if it's in June, if we could have it in the second half of June?
Is it like a day meeting or an evening, you're thinking? Like, is it quite long?
You know, an hour, 2 hours at the most. Depends on how detailed.
What does Monday the 13th look like?
That's fine by me.
Good with me.
I am all day,
Gone?
gone all day. 8:30 to 5.
14th?
I'm working that day, but if it was in the evening, I can make it work.
Yeah, 14th I can do. Anyone else?
14th, I'm working nights.
So
So
it
it
is-
is,
Nice,
starts at 7, so we could have it, 5-ish or whatever. I could, if it's only gonna be a couple hours, we could, 4 or 5.
I can't make 4, but maybe 5:30 is probably the earliest.
Just, I don't know how much time it needs to be.
Okay, so let's put a question mark on the 14th.
Are you nights that whole week, Dave?
Yeah, well, just Monday and Tuesday night,
Okay, what about the Wednesday then?
Wednesday,
Just remember that that's during this site selector stuff going on, so there
That's right.
could be events happening that we might want to be part of.
I think the site selector dinner is the 17th. Is the meeting.
17th, 18th, like I'm booked out there on the 18th, which is a Saturday.
Or I can suggest the afternoon of the 22nd, which is your regular council meeting.
I'm away. I'm on a strat planning with RMA.
Are you, Dave and Devin, you guys are both off that week, right? The 20th to the 24th?
Yeah, I work the 20th, but then I'm off.
I work the days of 20th, 21st, and the nights 23rd and 22nd.
Oh,
But I'm good the 24th.
20th I can do. What is June
20th or 21st, it was in the evening, like 7:30 I could do.
Yeah, the 20th, the evening would work for me.
that's fine with me.
Does that work for you, Councilor Dean?
You're talking 7:30?
So is everyone good with that date?
Yeah, the evening, 7:30, 20th, I'm good.
Peter, you good with that too, or?
Oh, jeez. Oh, no. Okay, that's 2 p.m. Next day's my travel day, so I just jumped in the truck and go. Okay, so June 20th at 7:30, did we say? Yes? And special meeting, and this is, what's the description of the special meeting?
Organizing,
Organization.
the organizing,
What, sorry?
the organization.
Not reorganizing, the organization.
The organization.
Reorganization.
Woodlands County
Here
Organization.
now.
I'll make a motion, the council hold a special meeting June 20th at 7:30 PM in the Whitecourt Council Chambers for a special meeting of the organization.
And you won't be streaming that because it's a closed session.
In closed session.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right. Go ahead,
I don't
Councilman.
think we accepted the CAO report. Is it?
That's correct.
No.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the CAO report as information.
Awesome. Okay. Motion to accept CAO accepted. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to move into committee of the whole. I'm going to go ahead and ask that we do that, and then we're just gonna have a short break, and that way everybody can, kind of knows where we're at. That concludes the the public portion of the meeting anyways, so that way we can kind of sign it off. If people want to stick around, there will be a couple of things, there might be a couple of things coming out of the, but they'll be related to the in-camera. So with that, Councilor
Looking
Dean?
for a motion to move into the committee of the whole.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, I'll wait for, Nikita. And just for clarification, that
They've been notified.
So, before we adjourn, I just want to talk about our mission statement, just like 30 seconds, promise.
okay.
I don't know.
Fair enough. Just give us this.
Yeah, good.
Oh, yeah, we got updated.
Oh. We're live.
Okay, so we're back from our closed session. It is 2:00. And on item 11.1, which is the industry member appointment for the Pride Valley Aggregate Oversight Committee, we have a motion. Councillor Cush.
Make the motion, the council appoints Jeanette Williams from IJ Trucking to serve as industry member at large on the Pride Valley Aggregate, May 1st, 2022 to October 31st, 2025.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Cush. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Next one, Town of Whitecourt Arts and Culture and Convention Center and Library Project Partnership.
I make a motion for administration to proceed to draft a letter of response to the town of Whitecourt on the Arts and Culture and Convention Center.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Cush. Councillor Fulton. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. The item 11.3, ICF framework update. Councillor Dean?
Sure. Make a motion that council accept the intermunicipal collaboration framework update as information.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And last but not least, the mission statement's under adjournment. Okay, go ahead.
So what I'd like to add, or ask council to consider, is right above mission statement, just put our identity, proudly rural.
There's a discussion around branding that we want to have yet.
Okay.
And it's not lost, but there's a,
You want to put it on a governance and priority meeting to have a discussion about?
on branding, yeah.
And
Do you want to make a motion to that?
Sure, I'll move that we have a conversation about branding, specifically with respect to the council agendas at our governance and priorities meeting.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. With that, we're on to item 12. Who wants to do it? Councillor Cush.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. No discussion on those. All in favor? Any opposed?